We begin the day with the president who will not give up. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has once again urged allies to allow his country to use Western weapons to attack deep inside Russia. On Friday, Zelenskyy spoke at Ramstein Air Base here in Germany, where representatives from some 50 countries gathered for talks that were hosted by U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. Zelenskyy later met with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz for talks in Frankfurt. Now, Zelenskyy wants to secure more weapons to help his nation push the Russian invaders off Ukrainian territory.
We do want to end this war. We want peace. We want to save our people, first of all, our country. And it is Putin who doesn't want peace and is obsessed with territorial conquests. He wants our cities or the ruins that remain of them. And that is why we need strength. We need to force Russia to seek peace. We need to make Russia cities and even Russian soldiers think about what they need, peace or Putin. And it is realistic to push them to choose peace.
And for more, I'm joined now by the former commander of the U.S. Army here in Europe, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Ben Hodges. Mr. Hodges, it's good to have you back on the program. I want to ask you about Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. He was present at today's contact meeting. In fact, that was his first in-person appearance at this meeting. I was struck by how much attention this fact has received, especially in the media here in Germany. Should we be reading anything into this, or is there anything to be read here?
Yeah, what we should be reading into it is that this is extremely important for the survival of Ukraine and their ability to win this conflict. And it also, I think, is important that he is able to speak face-to-face to people like Secretary Austin and others and convey to them the sense of urgency of being able to deliver capabilities and on time. I mean, a lot has been promised, but it's not been delivered on time. And so I think his presence helps inject a little bit more urgency into the process.
Yeah, you bring me to my next question or point. Zelenskyy, in his address today, thanked members of the contact group, as he always does. He then said, basically, I'm paraphrasing here, you promised more weapons. Those weapons still haven't arrived. Is there any reason to think that's going to change?
Well, I would expect that there will be a jolt of energy into the system after today with President Zelenskyy's personal appeal. But I have to say that the United States, the UK, and Germany, while we have collectively have provided a lot, we have been dragging our feet. There has not been the sense of urgency needed to make sure that Ukraine has the ability to actually defeat Russia and to defend themselves. There is not that sense of urgency. There's a lot of talk, a lot's been provided, but it's not being done in a way that conveys that we are concerned that they might actually lose. And I think that's our fault. I think it's a reflection on the fact that the U.S. administration, the German government, the British government have not committed to actually helping Ukraine win this conflict. And in fact, we don't even say what our objective is. Only nonsense like we're with you for as long as it takes, which means nothing.
Yeah, that is something I think people on both sides of the Atlantic are wondering. How much longer will allies be committed to this war? I mean, the German defense minister today said that weapons and funding are secure for Ukraine well into the year 2026. So are we talking about another 2 years of this war?
Well, again, it goes back to the political responsibility of our elected officials, whether it's the American president or the German Bundeskanzler. They have to clearly identify the strategic objective. Now, I believe, and many others believe, that the objective should be to help Ukraine actually defeat Russia. It's to our strategic advantage that Russia is forced back to the 1991 borders, and to live within their own borders, not only because of the stability and security of Europe, but the Chinese are watching also. And if they see that we in the West are not willing and able to help defend things like sovereignty and international agreements in Europe, they will not be too impressed with anything that we say about sovereignty, freedom of navigation, et cetera, in the Indo-Pacific region. So this is about a lot more than just Ukraine. Now, if the president and if the Bundeskanzler would say, look, we want Ukraine to win, and we're going to do everything necessary to help them win, this will be over this year. It could have been over last year. But if we continue to drag along like we are now, our Eastern European allies, the Baltic countries, Poland, Finland, Romania, others like that, they are not going to slow down because they know the price of Ukraine's failure.
Now, when you say being committed to winning this war, are you meaning that there should be a green light given for Ukraine to use Western weapons to attack even deeper inside Russia? Because, you know, Zelenskyy asked for that permission today and he did not get it.
Yeah, this is, I think, criminal negligence on our part. Criminal negligence. I don't know how many more times we have to watch Russian missiles slam into apartment buildings and schoolyards and shopping centers, killing kids and innocent people, and yet we don't allow Ukraine to shoot at the places from which these attacks are originating. There's no legal, moral, or operational reason to deny them the ability to do that. And the Russians, of course, can see that we are limiting Ukraine's ability to do that. And so they're going to continue doing this. They clearly don't have any moral compunction about killing innocent people. That's not going to stop until they are stopped. And I don't want to hear our administration or the German government or anybody talk about that our prayers are with the poor people of Ukraine when we're not actually doing anything to protect them from what Russia is doing.
But you know there are more European allies who are coming out publicly and saying, yes, we support Ukraine using these weapons to hit deeper inside of Russia. It's the United States that remains reluctant to change its policy.
Primarily the United States, that's right. And this is where, despite all the good things that President Biden and his administration have done, this is an absolute failure of leadership to be decisive in helping Ukraine win, because it benefits all of us. This is not some charity thing for our friends in Ukraine. This is about stability and security in Europe, which affects American security and American prosperity as well. Now, look, Germany is a sovereign nation, so Germany cannot hide behind the United States just because my president has failed here. Germany has lots of capability, things that they could be doing more, and I think that they are using American reluctance as an excuse. The UK, same thing. So these are sovereign nations that need to understand. I mean, Germany will be one of the biggest losers if Ukraine fails, which means millions more Ukrainian refugees coming into Central and Western Europe, continued disruption of grain and energy shipments, which affects prices for all of us. So I think that Germany and UK could act with more decisiveness, even if the United States fails.
Well, Mr. Hodges, what would you say then to those European allies who hear U.S. lawmakers arguing that Ukraine is far away from the U.S., this is a European problem, it's not a transatlantic problem, the Europeans need to deal with this?
Well, these are not exclusive of each other. Europeans of course, need to be dealing with this, whether or not the United States provides the necessary leadership and support, because this is about more than just Ukraine. Americans rightly ask, why should we do this? Why does Ukraine matter? And I would say it matters to the United States because our prosperity in the United States is tied directly to Europe's prosperity. Our biggest trading partner is Europe. So if you've got conflict and millions of refugees and disruption of food and energy in Europe, that has a direct impact on our economy. So there's an economic reason why it matters. And then, of course, most Americans would say, yeah, but the bigger threat is China. Absolutely, which is another reason why we should help Ukraine defeat Russia. as part of deterring China from making the same terrible miscalculation that Russia has made. And if you want to prevent a conflict where NATO is involved, which means American soldiers, German soldiers, British soldiers, then we need to help Ukraine defeat Russia in Ukraine.
I want to press you on the Biden administration not being, fully committed to allowing Ukraine to win this war. Is there any reason to think that a Kamala Harris administration would be any different from Joe Biden? We know what a second Donald Trump administration would be like. So for the Ukrainians, regardless of what happens on Election Day in the U.S. in November, post-election does not look very good for them in terms of increasing U.S. support for the Ukrainian effort.
I'm not prepared to agree with that. I would expect that a Harris administration would be at least as supportive as the Biden administration, and the indicators I'm seeing are that it would be more decisive. I think that President Biden and people around him are seized with an excessive fear that Russia might escalate when nobody else believes that Russia will actually escalate or use a nuclear weapon. And I think the administration also has an excessive fear of what happens if Ukraine is so successful that the Putin regime might collapse. I don't think they will, but that's not something that we should be scared of anyway. I mean, the Soviet Union collapsed back and everything turned out pretty good, and we were not even surprised for it. Or we were not prepared for it, excuse me. So I would anticipate a President Harris, who, by the way, we already know that she's going to have a whole different national security team, different defense secretary, different foreign secretary. So I think she would be much better for U.S., Europe, the transatlantic relationship, for NATO, and for Ukraine. We don't know what a Trump administration would be like, except that we know he has never, ever in the last 10 years criticized Putin, ever. And he criticizes NATO and criticizes Germany frequently. So I think, of course, Europe and the Ukrainians will have to live with whoever the American people elect.
Mr. Hodges, before we run out of time, I just want to be clear about this. Are you saying that a Kamala Harris win in November is key now to Ukraine being able to defeat Russia?
What's key to helping Ukraine defeat Russia is making sure that Ukraine has all the capabilities they need to push Russia back to the 1991 border. That means long-range precision weapons. That means enough air and missile defense so that they can protect their civilian infrastructure and their people, and getting out of the way. Ukraine has no interest in permanently occupying any part of Russia. They just want Russia to live inside its own borders, which is what presumably all of us want. I mean, we always talk about the international rules-based order, the UN Charter. That means respect for sovereignty, respect for international law. This is in Europe's best interest. And so what's key is all of us helping Ukraine achieve that.
Ben Hodges, as always, Mr. Hodges, we appreciate your time and your valuable analysis tonight. Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity you guys give me.